Hi, I'm Brian. This is a video about some questions that may help people with anxiety. I enjoy a coaching method called clean language, and there are some questions using that method that may be useful. I was on a Facebook group, and some of the comments were about anxiety in this group, and some of the phrases used were talking about what is the best thought, what is the strongest thought to fight anxiety. That was the opening question. What is the strongest thought to fight anxiety? Some of the responses were: this too shall pass, confront what you're anxious about head on, take steps forward even if they're small, get out of your mind and face your fears. Now, a lot of these are metaphors. A lot of them, there's a fighting metaphor in a few of them. There's a movement into stepping forward in some of them. It too shall pass is for me, I think of clouds moving overhead and something like that. And another interpretation of that, I should get out of the way and let something pass. So this sort of mental space in a lot of this, where you are, where the another thing or something is that you need to fight. Where is the thing that will pass? Where are you in relation to that? There's sort of mental or psychological space involved in these. Now, in the clean language approach to coaching, you actually take these quite seriously. Take them as if these words and metaphors represent a person's experience. And it's interesting what can happen when you do that. If you do that and you ask more questions, is a change possible? Is something useful, a resource, a useful or interesting or good thought or feeling or action or thing that you have? Is there something useful, resource that's possible? Right, so some of these, stop and let it pass. Do I need to get out of the way to let something pass? If it's in front of me, should I be fighting it? And if I'm stepping forward, am I stepping into a fight? So some of these metaphors are actually conflicting or could be conflicting depending on. And clarity around the metaphors and where things are and where you are in the space could help adjust what you do, because if you're doing the wrong thing for the model of the system or the metaphor you have, then it could be unconsciously that you're as I say, moving into a fight. Because it could be you generally get out of things when moving forward, but there's perhaps something wrong. Right, so I've talked about metaphors of fight, spaces. Another comment was get out of your mind. Now, that's a different sort of, there's different space in that. So where is that stepping out? Is it useful to think about stepping out? Is it useful to go somewhere else? How do you use that metaphor to help your anxiety? Right, clean language coaching, it would ask questions. Is there anything else about your mind? Where is your mind? And when you get out of your mind, where are you then? I would ask in a slightly different way. And by exploring these things, we can understand the model, the space for this. And as well as exploring things, we tend to find these useful things, these resources that I talked about. Clean language also often asks, what would you like to have happen? How would you like things to be? And what needs to happen for that to happen? Right. Clean language thinks about the situation in a few ways. Now, I think about anxiety as a propensity to have thoughts, feelings and behaviours that relate to negative future possibilities. Now, so what if something happens? And having a reaction to that. Now there's a present and there's a future, and it's not just a normal future, it's a possible future. I guess all futures are possible, but it's an awareness that something could happen, as opposed to I expect the sun to come up tomorrow. There's more possibility in that. Now, at a simple level, clean language can ask, what would you like to have happen? I'd like something to happen tomorrow. I'd like to talk to people. I'd like to do a project. I'd like to do tasks. They might be answers that many people would give. And if that in that clean language coaching session, there's probably the ability to build a model, build an idea, a picture, an experience of what the person wants to have happen, to think about the desired outcome, think about what needs to happen for that to happen, think of the resources, the good things, think about spaces and where things are, and think about now, but think about the future as well. It's quite a well developed model with time, with spaces, with thinking about me or the client as a person, thinking about what's around, what is in front, and various things like that. Now, if somebody is very anxious, then there may not be an agreement to coach in the first place. So, would you like me to coach? Well, the person may be very anxious and may not really take that seriously, essentially. So, therefore, if they drop out of it and they don't want to answer a question, that may mean that the coaching session would be less effective. Ethically, you'd have to consider at what point would it be unethical to coach somebody to help them explore things. Could it be unethical to ask people questions if they haven't got a clear agreement? Also, a coaching session may be harder if somebody is very anxious and their goals are unclear. Somebody's very anxious and they're thinking about a future and they don't like that, and that's all they're thinking about. They're probably not thinking about what they'd like to have happen, and I put that in a different space. But if they're concentrating over here and they want and what they'd like ultimately would be over there, if they could think about it, then there's a problem there in terms of the coaching session. Right, there could be a low attention span or an overwhelm if somebody is asking questions, if a coach is asking questions to somebody with anxiety, and there are a lot of emotions coming up and the difficult emotions or difficult thoughts, then if the person's getting overwhelmed, I wonder, could that make the coaching session harder? And another thought is what needs to change, and I guess I'm, as a coach, thinking on, I'm an amateur coach, is it a set of thoughts and feelings right now that we need to get change or get beyond, or is it a propensity to think about the future possibilities? So the metaphor at the beginning about fighting, are you fighting something here and now that if you win, that's it? Or is would that just be winning the battle and not winning the war, where the thoughts, feelings of anxiety would come back again? So what's going on? What is the nature of the model? What is the nature of the system? And what is it that needs to be worked on? And my point there, I guess, is it's easy to think we're dealing with one type of situation, and actually if you're dealing with another type of situation, perhaps the right interventions, the right coaching, the right intervention isn't happening to help things. There may be other things that are happening in the situation. There may be anxiousness, but there could be negative thoughts about yourself. Another comment here was, my thoughts are stupid. Is that just thinking a thought that's stupid, or is it linked to self-esteem and some integral core part of me is stupid? Is that anger on yourself? There can be points where somebody thinks that being anxious is stupid, and if that happens, then are you therefore dealing with a feeling of being anxious and an anger at yourself? Is there anger around at other people? And these things may mean that there's a series of things that are happening, potentially a pattern of things that are happening, and the whole situation may be a bit more complex or deeper than initially we would think. And my suggestion is that the coaching acknowledges that and works through whatever needs to be worked through to keep going. More now, we talked about or the suggestions in the Facebook group were moving forward and get out of your mind. So there's a spatial element, a mental space element of this, and a potential resource there is people talk about a happy place or a place of calm. I'm not saying you would tell people to go to that, but we have spatial metaphors for good things as well. One of my curiosities, and I wouldn't impose this necessarily on somebody, is will we have future? Will we consider the future where we're not thinking about the negative future? Will we think about the other things? It's quite useful to think about a desired outcome. What would you like to have happen? But even if it's other things that are just not the anxious thing, then at least you've got more future reference points. And I wonder, for some people, when they're anxious, is it a bit that's all that's happening? There's now the negative future that seems to feel like that it's happening. Whereas if you've more things happening in the future and possibilities, then perhaps it doesn't feel so bad. Okay, so I've talked about resources, I've talked about wider patterns. There could be anxiety, but also there could be anger. There could be anger turned on yourself. There could be withdrawal, and that could lead to a lack of support. Sometimes the whole combination would just make a slightly bigger model that it's worth working through and checking that as we get to a better state and more a solution that actually it helps. Everything is helped, and we're not just going to fall back into the hole or go back through a slightly different pattern, but essentially they're the same cycle. You've covered off, you've made enough of a change to make a difference to the whole thing. And so I've talked about some of the challenges. I think clean language is very powerful for understanding and exploring some of this system, some of these models. And I'm curious, if somebody is overwhelmed and there isn't a great contract, are potentially smaller steps useful? And one of the clean language questions is what can happen. Essentially, if I'm overwhelmed, I can't really think about a desired outcome. The coaching itself could get me overwhelmed. If we take smaller chunks, smaller bits of the question, what could happen, then potentially that just helps get a little bit more. I now have a feeling of space, that we don't have to go off and find this is what I want, which sounds like a big answer. We just see a little bit more, some good things, some good possibilities that aren't angst-ridden, and also some things that could happen in the near future. So building up the model, maybe changing the model at the right pace might help for somebody who is anxious. So I have explored a few spatial metaphors, a few metaphors that were used in a real Facebook group, and I've explored it with using real questions from a coaching approach. And I'll probably post this on YouTube or Facebook, and do make some comments and let me know what you think of this.